Good afternoon. I'm here to give another update on Oregon's fire situation, and I'm joined on the phone by the Oregon's Department of Forestry Fire Chief Doug Graff, Oregon State Fire Marshal Mariana Ruiz Temple, Oregon National Guard General Michael Stencil, Oregon Office of Emergency Management Director Andrew Phelps, and Oregon Health Authority's Environmental Public Health Section Manager Gabriella Goldfarb. And I'm joined in person by Chris Strickler, Director of the Oregon Department of Transportation. I just want to start by saying that my teams tell me a storm event coming in today will bring welcomed moisture, both along the coast and along both the west and east slopes of the Cascades. This is a good sign. There are always challenges with a storm like this, such as winds and lightning strikes, but our firefighting teams tell me that we are very grateful for the rain. My teams also tell me that we're making significant progress on containing some of these fires, and Fire Chief Doug Graff will speak more to that in just a moment. Since my last briefing, I've seen up and close what these fires have done to our communities, to our land, to our Oregon. Yesterday, I traveled to the front line of the Beachy Creek fire, where the damage and devastation is all-encompassing and shocking. I spoke with firefighters from the Oregon Department of Forestry's San EM unit, who've been responding to fires in the canyon since Labor Day. As you can imagine, what they've experienced over the last week and a half has been intense, heartbreaking, and very difficult. Despite having only 3 engines, these firefighters ran from one call to the next, trying desperately to protect their communities. And although they wanted to quite literally work 24/7, safety is a top priority, and they needed to eat and rest. They rallied at their office in Lyons, only to be awoken a short time later to evacuate the building because it too had caught on fire. The first thought that grabbed their minds was to grab their equipment and engines so they could continue doing their jobs. And that's what they did. But the building where they've trained, worked, and bonded together as a team was ultimately destroyed by fires. I also had an opportunity to talk with the Northwest Incident Management Team's 13 incident commander and saw the team's original command post yesterday near the Gates School building. Nothing remains but the skeletal structure of its door with the windows blown out. Meeting those firefighters and learning of the heroic actions they've taken to save others during this crisis has only strengthened my resolve to make sure that Oregon has what it needs to rebuild. I was happy to see earlier this week when my request for a presidential federal disaster declaration was granted quickly. I asked the federal government to waive the normal period of review for this so we could open up those FEMA resources swiftly. One way I know this aid will help is in the form of disaster unemployment assistance for Oregonians who are newly out of work because of the fires. We are already working to implement this assistance as quickly as possible, and although it's a manual process, by next week. Director Phelps will give more details of how this FEMA aid package will help get Oregonians back on their feet. Our Small Business Navigator hotline, which we set up a few months ago to help our businesses deal with the impacts of COVID-19, is now also equipped to answer questions about wildfire resources for businesses. They are available to help our small businesses navigate issues like accessing insurance, how to set up structural assessments of their businesses, SBA loans, and more. Folks can learn more at wildfire.oregon.gov or by calling 833-604-0880. I know that we have a really long road ahead, But time and time again, I am certainly in awe of the dedicated and brave people who have been doing anything and everything it takes to help their fellow Oregonians. To our firefighters, first responders, National Guard members, public servants, and to Oregonians who are helping their neighbors out during these difficult times, thank you. I want to add that in talking with the incident management team yesterday, they all went out of their way to say that the real heroes of the Beachy Creek fire in terms of protecting lives and saving structures were the local community members, the majority of them volunteers who worked tirelessly to save their communities. Even amid the shockingly quick devastation that occurred last week, I heard loud and clear that at no point did their spirits falter. In fact, it is this spirit that persists among our first responders, volunteers, and so many Oregonians that continue to work on the fires, continue to care for evacuees, and continue to rebuild our state. With that, I'll turn it over to our Fire Chief, Doug Graff.
I'll speak first to current weather conditions. We do have a storm front rolling in this evening, and that'll impact current firefighting weather and activities. And then I'll close with walking through the existing fires, large fires on the landscape. Off the map, we've made some great progress, so I would want to start with the fire briefing relative to where we stand across the landscape with the ones that are off the map, and I think that's important to recognize the progress we've made. So to begin, weather conditions, storm front is coming in this evening. We're expecting widespread moisture with this storm, so this is good news for Oregon, good news across the fire front, and typically during this time of year, we'll see storm fronts come from the southwest, and a lot of the moisture is captured on the coast range. This particular one is more of a southerly flow. So interestingly enough, a good portion of the moisture will be falling on the west slope of the Cascade. And if I could strip that out, that's exactly where I would ask for it. So we're looking at close to half of an inch to an inch on the west slope of the Cascade. On the coast range, less than that, quarter inch. But fires, as I'll detail later, looking really good on the coast range. So that moisture is going to help us out. The moisture is also should be hitting on the east slope of the Cascade, where we have a number. So it should be very favorable relative to putting us in good position for days coming relative to firefighting. Some of the challenges that the storm will bring, however, is we do expect lightning starting later this evening and tomorrow. We also expect, like typical with any storm front, the winds, called frontal winds that come with these storm fronts. So if the moisture doesn't come to the fires first, the winds will, and that could be problematic, pushing and testing any containment line that we have established. So certainly I'm concerned in particular on fires on the east side, Baraton, 242, Thielson at the top of the mountain, north of Crater Lake, and then again on the east side, the Lion's Head fire. So be watching those winds. The other challenge with that storm front, with an inch or half an inch of rain, we would expect some debris flows. We have a lot of bare soil out there from dozer lines and hand crews, and we're expecting some of that to unravel, exposed to the rain. We'd expect fallen trees across our lines. So it'll take some more work to repair control lines after this storm. About 24-hour period, perhaps through Friday, maybe a little bit longer than that. The storm will hit us, and then following that storm event, cooler temperatures, higher relative humidity. So all in all, this is a good forecast for Oregon for us to continue to make strong progress across all these fires. So I'll shift now to what we don't have on the landscape, and I think that's really important measure of where we stand today following that historic east wind event now over a week ago. I've reported on the number of fires, and I'll just list them because these ones have control lines around them, and they've held now for well over 72 hours. We've moved resources off of these fires onto the larger ones on the landscape, so reallocation is appropriate. So on the coast, the Echo Mountain fire out of Tillamook, that's looking really good, so I'd call that one off the map. Pike Road, where we evacuated Bay City, that's off the map. North Bank Road fire, south of Coos Bay, off the map. All those great success. Almeida fire in between Ashland and Medford, again, holding control lines for over 72 hours. Feeling really confident there, so off the map. Then in and around Portland, to the west, we had the power line fire out of Gaston, and then we had the Chehalem fire out of Newburgh. Both of those off the map. To the east of Portland in Clackamas County, North Cascade Complex, set around 2,000 acres. That was a number of about 5 fires, 100% line, once again, held for 72 hours. These are off the map. So now we can focus on the remaining 10 large fires on the landscape, and I'll detail these as we walk around the state. And the first grouping of fires is east of Clackamas County, Marion County. We know these well now, so this is the three fire that the governor detailed. It's sitting at 190,000 acres, 20%. That's an outstanding number, 20% containment there. Lion's Head by 190,000 acres, 10% contained, and then the Riverside by 137 acres at 6% contained. Combined, these fires are over 500,000 acres of burned on the landscape. What we've done to date with the opportunities with weather in our recent past, we've got control lines from east to Estacada running east up the mountain on the north side of the Riverside fire, and then we've connected Estacada to Lyons. That's over 120 miles of control lines established between those towns. From Lyons east, so the southern half of BC and Lion's Head, established control lines up and around the crest of the Cascades into Warm Springs. We'll continue to wrap that fire all the way back to the crest. That stretch is, close to 150 miles of control lines. There's still some tightening up of those control lines that need to happen, deep and canyons where we're connecting those lines with hand crews. We've got the resources pouring in from the nation that assists with these, and that is an absolute incredible amount of work in just a short time. Really proud of the folks on the line for what they've been able to accomplish there. Moving south to the Holiday Farm fire, that's 170,000 acres, 10% contained. We have 260 miles of line just on that fire alone to establish. And we're using existing road systems where available, heavy equipment, and tying in those dozer lines with hand lines in the steep canyons. Apache Creek fire, just to the south at 130,000 acres, very similar in size, tremendous amount of work, but 20% containment on that fire. So again, outstanding work, taking advantage of the opportunities. Continuing to the south, an area I'm concerned with is Steelton fire. This is north of Crater Lake. It sits at 8,600 at 1% contained. This is tougher ground to access, mostly hand crew work. So the team's in there doing good work. That's been hitting, the winds are hitting that up in the high country. So we're going to continue to move resources to that fire as needed. The 242 fire out of Chiloquin, looking great at 30% contained, 14,000 acres. That one's been holding lines for 72 hours. I didn't want to take that one off the map necessarily until after these winds move through. So really, my hope is that holds over the next 24, 48 hours, and I think we can put that one behind us. We're moving resources already off of that fire to other fires that are in critical need, such as Bratton. That's south of Paisley at 34,000 acres. But again, 30% contained. Did some really good work holding lines in and around Paisley. But I am concerned about the winds pushing that fires that we've had some clean air. So that's been productive work on the east side of the hill. South Open Chain fire outside of Medford sits at 32,000 acres, 25% contained. Again, impressive. So a lot of attention relative to focusing on resources there to hold those lines. We did wrap control lines around that fire a couple days ago. So beginning to gain some confidence relative to holding that fire. This moisture, that's one of those fires that's going to benefit greatly from the forecast. The other one that will benefit greatly from the weather forecast is Slater fire. This fire pushed up into the Illinois Valley, southwest of Medford. This is California. We have about 30,000 acres burning in Oregon, 10%. So I think the bottom line for 10 large fires remain on the landscape. We've taken 7 of them off our plates and reallocated critical resources to the right place. I could not be prouder than what we've done in this short amount of time, and teamwork is absolutely extraordinary. And you'll hear from some other partners here in this end of report now.
Thank you, Chief Graff. Fire Marshal Mariano Ruiz Temple, are you available?
I am. Thank you, Governor. And I would echo my colleague, Chief Graff, and he provided a very good update on the state of the state. In terms of the Oregon Fire Service, I would just mention that the fires are in a position where we feel comfortable in returning back to their districts the fire protection. And so over the course of the weekend, you could expect to see the Office of State Fire Marshal mutual aid resources demobilizing off of the Holiday Farm Fire, the Bratton Fire, and the Archie Fire. And that really puts us in a good place on those fires that we feel that the local mutual aid, the local counties have what's necessary in terms of where those fires are currently on the landscape. Good containment work there. The one fire that we continue to have our Oregon Fire Mutual Aid resources on is going to be the Slater. We do expect that it will receive some rain, as Chief Graff indicated. But that really is, in terms of structural protection, our primary focus. I want to highlight that this has been an unprecedented year for conflagrations and for fire, as we all know, upwards of 11 or 12 conflagrations, and it was truly all responders at every level. I want to make sure to make a point to thank our dispatchers who worked 40 straight hours on many of these fires, being the lifeline between fire responders and our public that needed our assistance. Sheriff's Office, local law enforcement, Oregon State Police, and our emergency managers. And I volunteers. The Oregon Fire Service is made up of 70% volunteers, truly the backbone of the Oregon Fire Service. And there is no way that we would be in the position that we are without the work of our local fire departments and our local volunteers coordinating completely across the complete coordinated system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fire Marshal Ruiz Temple. General Stencil, could you please give us an update regarding the Oregon National Guard's involvement?
Sure, thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everybody. As of last night, the National Guard had 1,261 guardsmen on status, and we expect that number to grow by more than 50 over the next 2 days. Our traffic control points across the state have grown by more than 100 since the last time we briefed. Right now we have approximately 336 service members manning 63 traffic control points across 7 counties. We expect to be standing up 10 more traffic control points today in Lake County as well. On the aviation front, we continue to have 2 HA-60 Blackhawks in support of the Britttown fire down in Lakeview. We're transferring 2 more aircraft, one out of Aurora and one out of Hillsborough, to support that effort as well. That will leave 1 HA-60 remaining in Aurora, awaiting mission assignment once the weather lifts for the Northwest. With regard to ground firefighting support, our 3 teams on the 242, Echo Mountain, and Archie Creek fires continue to do great work. Ongoing repositioning discussions with ODF as they continue to make progress, as Mr. Graff mentioned earlier this morning. So we may see them moving over the next few days. Altogether, we've got 625 folks, more than 625 actually, engaged in this effort. Our folks in National Guard Response Task Force 4 and 5 started training down at Camp Riley on the Oregon coast the other day. They're doing that on federal dollars that were supported by Senator Merkley, and they're on schedule to depart for fires on September 22nd on state active duty, and it's yet to be determined where they're going to be located. Lastly, our 12-person fatality search and recovery team continues to assist with mortuary affairs down in Albany. But on the good news side, they're looking to stand down here on 23 September. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, General Stenzel, and I also want to give a shout out. I know that a number of our National Guards men and women have volunteered for this effort and have left their places of employment. Really appreciate their employers allowing them to serve their state in such a critical way at such an essential time for our state. So thank you to our employers. Director Phelps.
Thank you, Governor. I want to begin by thanking, as has been done previously, but it just can't be said enough, the frontline workers who are continuing to battle these fires, support mass care, sheltering and feeding operations, our federal partners, our local partners, our 911 operators, and especially our firefighters. I'm absolutely humbled and inspired by the work they're doing within their communities and throughout the state. We're lucky here in Oregon to have those folks watching out for us. I do want to remind folks that this continues to be a life safety operation, remind Oregonians to heed evacuation notices. We still have thousands of Oregonians under some level of evacuation notice. Many have still not been able to return to their homes. If you live in a place that's been evacuated or under level 3 evacuation notice, stay away. We've seen many reports. We know that we've got some severe weather headed into those burn areas later today and tomorrow, which could create additional hazardous conditions. Wherever you are in Oregon, make sure you're weather aware. Weather Service forecast offices throughout the state have forecasted flash flood watches for many areas. So please be cognizant of that, stay alert, and stay informed. I want to touch right now on the fatality number that's been confirmed by the Oregon State Medical Examiner's Office. That number remains at 8. We will be very intentional and deliberate with releasing new fatality numbers. This is a slow process. There are thousands and thousands and searched. We want to make sure that we're as deliberate as possible to bring closure to Oregonians who lost their homes or lost loved ones. We still have fire in many of the areas where we've lost homes, and responder safety is of paramount concern to us. We're continuing to build that statewide picture and leverage multiple sources and integrate. This includes structures that have been lost, those who've been reported missing or unaccounted for, and fatalities. We have multiple organizations doing boots-on-the-ground work to conduct those search and rescue operations. I certainly want to acknowledge the federal role with the urban search and rescue teams and the work that local search and rescue teams are doing to assist with those search efforts. Again, we want to ensure that every Oregonian who is impacted by this disaster that experienced loss can also experience closure. Safe shelter for those who have been evacuated as long as that need exists. With our nonprofit and federal partners to ensure adequate commodities to support those operations. Last night, we had 130 Oregonians in congregate shelter environments, supporting a total of 875 individuals in a congregate setting. Again, I want to emphasize 130 of those folks were in a traditional congregate shelter environment across 6 shelters, but the majority are being supported through recreational vehicles living on site at those shelter locations. We have a far higher number of folks staying in non-congregate shelter environments, most notably hotels and motels. Last night, the Red Cross reported 2,195 individuals being sheltered in 1,243 hotel rooms across 68 different hotels in multiple counties. This is a tremendous operation to ensure each of those folks have the services and support that they need. But again, I want to continue to emphasize we will remain engaged through the Red Cross and our Emergency Support Function 6 state agency lead, Department of Human Services, to continue providing safe shelter for all those who need it who are impacted by these fires. I want to touch briefly on our increased look to long-term recovery operations. As the governor's noted, we did receive a federal disaster declaration, not just to governments who suffered losses to infrastructure, but also to individuals who are impacted. I want to focus specifically on individual assistance. Individual assistance is made available to folks who are impacted by this disaster in Clackamas, Douglas, Jackson, Klamath, Lane, Lincoln, Lynn, and Marion counties. We want to encourage folks to register for individual assistance and apply for those benefits through the FEMA assistance program. You can visit www.disasterassistance.gov, or you can call 1-800-621-3362 to access recovery services and support. We want to ensure equity and appropriate access for all Oregonians who are impacted by this disaster. We continue to make materials and information available in multiple languages, but we really want to work to make sure every Oregonian who is impacted is met where they are and has access to the services that they need. I do want to be clear with individual assistance. We want to encourage Oregonians who are insured to utilize the maximum insurance benefits to which they're entitled. We're working with state agencies and federal partners to ensure that happens. But we also want to manage that expectation of what can be expected through individual assistance. There's a maximum household benefit of $35,500 for folks who are uninsured or underinsured and lost property. This includes repairs that can be made, providing temporary housing, or replacement of household appliances and goods. There is also a $35,500 maximum benefit for what we consider other needs assistance. This can include medical and dental expenses, repair, cleaning, or replacement of clothing, household items, and necessary special materials like computers, school books, or supplies. It also can go towards cleanup items, fuel for primary heat sources, and repairing or replacing damaged vehicles that were damaged through the disaster. This assistance can also cover funeral and burial costs. Again, we want to encourage every Oregonian who is impacted to apply for this assistance. We won't stop messaging the importance of this until we know that every Oregonian who is eligible has received the assistance that they need. Right now, we have just over 1,300 folks who have registered. We expect that number to be much, much higher than that, and FEMA is ensuring that they've got the capability to meet the need of all who are requesting assistance. I'll close simply by saying this is going to be a long-haul recovery operation. We need to make sure that infrastructure, emergency services, and the other systems that are needed to repopulate the areas of Oregon that were devastated by these fires are in place, and that we can do so in a supportive, equitable, and as quickly and safely as possible. But this is going to be a long-haul operation. We know that based on our experiences here, and we know that based on what we've seen in other parts of our country impacted by similar fires. You'll hear, I think, from Director Strickler from the Oregon Department of Transportation. That's one great example of the multiple state agencies that have come together to respond to what's really been a pretty dark couple of days here for the state of Oregon. I want to thank Director Strickler and all of the state agencies for their continued partnership and just remind Oregonians we're in this for the long haul. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Director Phelps. Gabriella Goldfarb from the Oregon Health Authority Environmental Health Public Health Manager.
Thank you, Governor. The last time you spoke, we had some not great news about air quality, and I need to urge people that our air quality advisory that Department of Environmental Quality issues is in effect through today, but based on a recent smoke coordination call, again with weather, air quality, fire, and health agencies, we are seeing good news in terms of air quality coming soon for most parts of Oregon. People along the coast are already seeing good air quality. We are optimistic that smoke in the rest of western Oregon will clear by the middle of the day Friday. Central Oregon skies will clear over the course of Friday and Saturday. That might not be the case near active Oregon fires or places in southern Oregon impacted by smoke from California fires, and particularly the Slater fire that Chief Graff was talking about, for example. The smoke can be unpredictable, and with these fires still on the landscape, we'll have to keep an eye on conditions and update them. So when we get that rain tonight that Chief Graff spoke about, that will help flush smoke from the atmosphere and hopefully tamp down the fires without bringing the lightning that starts new ones. And the exception to this improved smoke picture may be far eastern Oregon, where Baker, Malheur, and Harney counties may have lingering smoke, though improving to less harmful levels into next week. So we do want to urge people who don't live on the coast to sit tight. Our first responders are still needing roads to stay clear for firefighting and moving people displaced by fire. And that advice about staying home is also really important for limiting the spread of COVID-19, of course. Other than that, we are turning our attention to trying to ensure safety of people who are returning to burned areas, and we have that information on wildfire.oregon.gov. We're developing a new resource we hope to have on the website today or at latest tomorrow morning for people whose properties did not burn, but they may be returning or just getting ready to open up their windows to having a lot of ash and soot around. And so we'll be getting a resource up about how to safely clean that up. Unfortunately, we are still seeing, again, the elevated numbers of folks. It's not, I think last time I said 1 in 10 people are coming in with asthma symptoms. It's a little bit less. It's about 9.1% is our most recent monitoring, but that's still above the normal levels that we would see. So we are seeing those smoke impacts, and even after the smoke clears, people may still feel the effects over the next week or two. For most people who are otherwise healthy, they should start feeling better, pretty soon after the air clears. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Gabriella. And last but not least, Chris Strickler, the Director of the Department of Transportation, to talk about our road situation.
Thank you, Governor Brown. First and foremost, my heart and thoughts go out to those impacted by this significant event. And my sincere appreciation to the first responders and those that are on the fire line, really keeping the rest of us safe and able to sit in this room today. In addition to our ODOT employees that are assisting them, the work is just tremendous. The wildfires across the state are simply unprecedented, as you've heard today, and the loss and damage won't be fully understood for many weeks or even months to come. Oregon's road system is absolutely critical to our ability to respond, not only to the fires, but for the communities to recover as we start to get back on our feet. The magnitude of damage to our roadways cannot be overstated. We're already actively working to assess, repair, and reopen roads in areas where we deem them safe. It's important for the public to hear that roadways where fires have burned through are incredibly dangerous. Our first priority is to keep our people, our first responders, and our contractors safe. If they can't show up to work and continue to do the work that they're doing, then it limits or delays the ability for us to continue to open the roadways. So we have to do it in a safe manner. A few facts that really come into the safety realm and really start to bring a picture to what we're experiencing out there. Weakened, falling, or fallen trees are everywhere on many of the routes or the fire areas that you've already heard about. Rocks the size of hoods of cars are actually falling onto the roadways at this point, and we've heard reports that that's not just one or two, but it's several. Many of our slopes are actively moving. You can imagine when the root system and brush system has burned away, the ability for those to hold back the rocks and the unstable slopes is diminished greatly. Steep canyons and rock chutes and lots of burned land that is up steep slopes will continue to be a hazard for some time. Our anticipated biggest impact areas are likely to be our mountainous river canyons, Clackamas River, Santiam River, and Mackenzie. So think of Oregon 224, Oregon 22, and Oregon 126. Oregon 138 east of Brewsburg up to North Umpqua has similar concerns, but we are hearing good news about that area already, and so we're optimistic there. I have to mention that with the coming rain and snow in the winter, while it is great for the fire season, we do need to continue to prepare for post-fire season and what that means to those unstable slopes. The public can expect to have more landslides, more impacts, and more continued fallout from these activities as soon as the moisture saturates the ground. It's important that the public is aware. It's also important for the public to hear that ODOT are federal, local, and utility, as well as private partners. And that's just about everybody mentioned, and you've heard the private enterprise kicking in and the communities really diving in to help themselves and help each other are significant and are absolutely working as fast as possible to repair and reopen the roads across the state. Specifically, we have members of our team, the ODOT team, that many of them reported to work when the fires began Sunday, Monday, over a week ago. Some of them went home for a short rest and found that they did not have a home to go to. They reported back to work the next day and have been working ever since. Again, I can't overstate the significance. As we look to the long-term recovery and reopening of roads across the state and know that it may be many months or even a year before some of the roads are back to pre-fire conditions. So how are we managing the reopening of those roads? We're looking at a 4-level system, level A through D. Level A is roads closed completely. Even we aren't going in there in order to assess because it's too dangerous. Level B, roads will be open to critical services only, including emergency responders, search and rescue, utility companies, ODOT personnel. Level C is a partial opening, access for property owners and those that need, and I emphasize need, to get through. Flaggers and pilot cars and lane closures will be part of that equation. And then level D is a full opening, open to through traffic, but is still ongoing repairs with single lane closures, etc. over the next year. I'll share some of the specifics that we are seeing across the state right now. As of 10 a.m. today, we have over 240 miles of highways that are currently closed because of the fires. Most of them are already in level B status and are open for critical service, while the fire crews, utility companies, ODOT crews, and contractors are busy at work trying to restore as much as possible. Specific in the Riverside fire vicinity. Yesterday, we were able to open Highway 211 from Molalla to Estacada, but Highway 224 is still closed. We have over 20 miles of that area still closed in level B status right now. Santiam Fire Complex, Highway 22, we have roughly 60 miles closed at this point, and that encompasses the communities of Gates, Mill City, and Detroit, to name a few. Our hope is over the next few days to possibly get to level C access for some of the area on 22, and that would be for the communities of Gates and Mill City. We do not anticipate that coming anytime soon for the community of Detroit and beyond to the east. The Holiday Farm Fire location, Highway 126, we have 30 miles of that section closed. Our crews and contractors are on the ground at this point, right now removing hazards to get the road partially open for those communities that need to get back in and get us to level C, but we are not at that point yet. The fires east of Roseburg, the two fires have Highway 138 closed for 50 miles starting at milepost 23. We continue to make good progress in this area and expect to see partial openings, hopefully even this week, but again, they'll only be open if we can do so safely. Those are just a few of the highlights, and there are other wildfire impacts in other places of the state and road closures that are going to be changing daily. We encourage you to check TripCheck for the latest information. That is tripcheck.com. And we also have additional resources there that explain what's going on in each of the canyons that I just mentioned. In closing, I ask for your patience as we continue to work through and get these routes open as soon as we can. I want to reemphasize that if you don't have a need to be there, please don't. The safety of your fellow Oregonians depends on that. We will get them open just as quickly as possible, and we have a commitment to continue to communicate, especially through our web resource, so that you have up-to-date information. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Strickler. Charles, I think we're ready for questions at this point.
Thanks. Our first question is from Wright Gazaway with K2. Go ahead, Wright.
Thank you very much. My questions are for the state fire marshal. Yesterday, they said in Clackamas County the plan was to demobilize those units over there on the smaller fires. If you could just confirm that that did happen, and then the second part is make sure people understand that that doesn't mean no firefighters will be out there.
Yes, great question. Thank you. My understanding is that we are demobilizing off the Cascades or North Cascades complex. That should be done by the end of the day. I could seek more clarification, but last I heard that was our plan for the day. What essentially that means is the Office of State Fire Marshal does not have fire engines or firefighters that work for our office, but what we do administer is the Oregon Fire Mutual Aid System that is essentially made up of the Oregon Fire Service. And so when counties need additional assistance above and beyond what they have locally, they do request assistance through the Fire Mutual Aid System. And when we demobilize off of fire, what it essentially means is that that local county fire defense board chief, that he or she feels that she has enough response, or that they have enough resources left to take on back any of their fire response needs. So it's a conversation locally with the local fire chief, with that fire defense board chief, making that decision that they feel comfortable enough to release resources and that they will take on those duties.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. Our next question is from Katie Strike with KOBI. Go ahead, Katie.
This is a two-part question for Andrew Phelps. When will the state have a physical presence in Jackson County? And then when will the state lay out what its emergency housing plan is?
Thanks for that question, Katie. So the state already is very active down south in Jackson County. We've had liaisons deployed to the county emergency coordination center or emergency operations center with the county. We also have a large federal presence conducting the search and rescue missions in the areas of the Alameda Drive fire. As far as the state's housing recovery strategy, per the state's disaster recovery plan, we are convening the Disaster Housing Task Force, which will be a joint operation with FEMA, with my office, and with Oregon Housing and Community Services to look at those intermediate and long-term housing needs. And we'll provide much more details on that once we get past this immediate mass care shelter operation.
When is the layout for the distribution for the FEMA aid that Oregon's received, the federal aid?
So there's a couple of different categories of FEMA aid that's come to Oregon, three categories really. There's that direct federal assistance, and those are the actual individuals and people that you see working on the ground doing the search and rescue mission, through the Army Corps of Engineers assisting with debris removal planning. The second category of aid is public assistance, and those are dollars earmarked for the state and local governments and tribal governments that were impacted to repair and replace damaged infrastructure, roadways, communications infrastructure, bridges, etc. The third piece is that individual assistance program, and that's really where I need everyone's help encouraging Oregonians to apply for that assistance. There are programs that can make funding and other assistance to meet immediate needs available now for folks to apply for. We just need to get them into the system and start working through that process. We would expect that we'll be incurring costs and working through reimbursements for years. This is going to be a very complicated, long-term recovery operation, and it's not going to move, I don't think, as quickly as any of us would like it to, but we need to ensure we're being deliberate about how we're leveraging those federal dollars, ensuring we're rebuilding back the right way, and building back in a way that makes us less susceptible to these types of disasters in the future.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Our next question is from Sarah Klein with the Associated Press. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, yes. I know there have been high hopes for the incoming rain, but you guys also expressed some very serious concerns, including lightning, which originally ignited some of the fires on the West Coast, and strong winds if they arrive before the rain. So with that said, I'm wondering how critical is the weather in the next 24, 48 hours, and is it possible that the fires could get worse instead of better with this weather?
Chief Graff, do you want to take that one?
I will, Sarah. Thanks for the question. Absolutely, and that's why I stressed that on the front end. For the next 24 hours, I'm expecting some challenges with the weather. The storm front does bring favorable moisture. However, there are some downsides, and that's those winds. And it depends on how those winds land. If it comes in front of that storm front before the rains hit us, then it's going to push containment lines where we have them established. And I highlighted a few of those fires that concerns me, particularly Bratton, Fieldston up in the high country, Bratton out of Paisley, and then the east side of Lions Head, where we've got where those are exposed. Deeper into the canyon, west, further north on the west slope of the Cascades, feeling a little bit more confident. But the reality is those winds certainly could push fires and will challenge us. Hopefully those rains come abruptly after those winds to really put a cap on any significant fire behavior.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Our next question goes to Peter Wong with the Portland Tribune. Go ahead, Peter.
Hi, this question's for the governor. Monday you referenced Senate Bill 1536, which died with the 2020 regular legislative session. What are you prepared to do to advance the proposals that the Wildfire Council came up with and which you put into the form of legislation?
Thank you, Peter. Given the focus around saving lives and search and rescue operations and making sure that firefighters in the field have adequate team members, people power, and resources, we're focused there right now. These issues before the end of the year, that we have to really tackle how we ensure that our forest lands are managed through responsible thinning, harvest, fuel reduction, as well as prescribed fire, that we have to make sure that our communities are better prepared in terms of evacuation plans like they were set forth in the legislation, and that we have to make sure that we are fighting these fires with current methodologies as opposed to systems that were put in place over 100 years ago. Both the intensity, the temperature, the frequency, and the length of the fire season have substantially changed in the last several decades. Oregon needs to update our firefighting strategies to meet those new challenges.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Our next question comes from Blake Allen with KTBZ. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, this question's for the governor. I've listened to the concerns of the Oregon Construction Contractors Board from the state level, what measures are being taken to protect homeowners from scammers as, there's worries they might come in and look to take advantage of those looking to rebuild their homes?
That is a really great question. I am asking the Attorney General to focus her efforts as we move into recovery around preventing scams and price gouging. I will tell you that I had to sign a price gouging I am hoping that action, along with other actions from the Department of Justice, will prevent scams. But we know they're going to happen. So it's going to require both education, information to consumers, and, of course, enforcement.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Blake. We have time for just a couple more questions, so we'll go now to Dick Hughes. Go ahead, Dick.
Thank you very much. Governor, I'd like to ask about press access. Yesterday, each day is a blur, so I think it was yesterday that you went up to the Sandy M Canyon with a number of folks and looked at the fire situation firsthand. I was curious whether there were any press who were invited to go along, and if not, why not? I certainly wouldn't expect all Oregon press, including me, to be invited.
Thank you, Dick. I did go up the Sandy M Canyon area yesterday to tour the Beachy Creek fire lines, to meet with first responders and law enforcement and National Guardsmen and women, and thank them for their incredibly heroic efforts. We did not bring any press along on that particular tour. I did bring the Senate President, Peter Courtney, along with me, so I assume he will share his perspectives and his stories as well. I will tell you, Dick, we plan to tour the Mackenzie River Canyon area today. Unfortunately, the conditions were not safe, so we are not going there, did not go there today. Look, I think it's really important that press have an accurate sense of what's happening on the ground. The press has been critically important for us in terms of getting our messaging out to Oregonians about evacuation levels, the situations regarding the fire. We'll continue to bring the press on as it is safe to do so.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
Last question in the queue today is Lachey Wesley with K2. Go ahead, Lachey.
Thank you. Around the press conference, and there were 13 new fires were caused by downed power lines. Why wasn't there coordination between the state utility companies to shut off power before the windstorm?
So there have been obviously some reports, and I saw it with my eyes yesterday, about that at least some of these fires or parts of the fires in the state were caused by down electrical lines. In the coming days, in the coming weeks, there will be thorough investigations to determine the exact cause of these fires, including any role that downed power lines may have played, as well as any responsibility that utilities may bear. I believe I mentioned last week that Portland General Electric, for example, was proactive in terms of shutting off power to their customers on Mount Hood. There are going to be roles for the Public Utility Commission and the legislature in ensuring that we have sufficient fire safety policies in place in the future to evaluate the changing risks for both investor and consumer-owned utilities. And I expect the legislature to be examining those issues in the months and weeks ahead.
Thanks, Lachey.
Thank you.
Those are all the questions we have for you today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.